thanks to be for this talk about like fast logs. I might talk very fast. That's because I'm very stressed. I just arrived, nearly missed my connecting flight in Frankfurt. Anybody knows people in the airport in Frankfurt? It's every time I go through Frankfurt, it's a mess. So if you know anybody, please just tell them they should improve. Anyway, so I'm Nicolas Fränkel. Yes, I have a German last name, but I'm French. So you might also notice I have a slight accent, especially when I'm getting a bit tired. For a long time during my career, I was like a consultant, like doing development, architecture, or what have you. And last year, I switched my career to do developer advocacy. What is developer advocacy? Well, before I was joking, telling people, hey, I'm paid to go to conference and drink beers. But I stopped because I thought that people were taking me seriously. So developer advocacy is more like trying to build a community and to let people know about it. Currently, I'm working for a company called Hazelcast. Who knows about Hazelcast? A couple of hands. Good, so if you have any questions, problem, issues, improvements, idea, or whatever, just come to me afterwards. We have two products. One is IMDG, so the in-memory data grid. That's a product that in general people know about. So for caching and a lot of different iterating use cases. And recently we delivered a new product called Jet that builds upon IMDG, and basically it's all about stream processing. Okay, now the questions. How many of you are developers? Couple of hands. How many of you can understand this line of code? Okay, that's much better, but not everybody. Okay, so basically, this is Java code. So sorry, I've been a Java developer. So basically, this is a logger, this is an object, and there is this method called debug, and then there is this like string, and here you execute a method. And there are like a couple of logging frameworks in Java, but basically most of them work like you define a level, and then you define what you want to log, and if you are configured like above this level, then of course you log it, you write it down, and if it's below, you don't do nothing. So imagine that here I am a debug, so if my level is info, nothing will happen, and if my level is debugged, then it will be written down into the log. So far, so good. Now I noticed that since it's Java, I forgot the syntax. Yeah, that's not that great. Okay, who can tell me the problem with this line of code? Yeah, exactly. No. What the gentleman said is basically cart.getPrice is computed whether you log it or not. Whether you log it or not. So here, I always have little demos. So I have a cart. Basically, of course, I have a long computation, and it's like a random number every time. And if I log it, done. So basically, what happens here is whatever happens, whether I'm in debug or not, then it takes time. I might change the log level. It won't change anything. I will still need to wait. And that's a real issue. So in order to correct this, we might have words around it. So basically what we are saying is only call this card.getPrice only if it's debug enabled. So you evaluate first, is debug enabled, then logger.debug will evaluate it again. That's pretty stupid. But that works. The problem with this approach is that every developer needs to do it. It must be a discipline. And I can bet that at some point, something very stupid is going to happen. this is bound to happen because, I mean, developers, I am developer, some of you are developers, this is bound to happen. Could be also reversed, no? So basically, you will notice a not synchronization between the gourd condition and the statement. A way to approach that would be to use like some black magic, like some aspect-oriented programming that will like tweak the bytecodes. It will work, it will be automated, but then at some point, perhaps you don't want to do that. So, what's the problem? How can we correct that? Sorry. What we can do is, instead of like sending a computation, sending the result of the computation, we can send the computation itself. So basically, instead of sending the result of code.getPrice, we send the function. And at that point, we can check whether it's debug enabled, and only if it's debug enabled when we call the method and we execute the function. It's called like lazy. And here, if I'm doing this call, it's much faster. Here, nothing happened because I'm in debug and probably I have a level of info, so everything is fine. But it's a bit slower than if I had the guard, but it's still much better than waiting for 5 seconds. This is next. Also, if there are not many developers, probably I assume there are like DevOps people or sysadmin people, and you probably know about it. Right? Developers, they don't know. I don't know that much. I mean, I write a log and everything will be fine afterwards. But the people who like operate our system, they know about it. Like, yeah, we are bound to the physical world, and basically depending on the media that you are using, on the disk type that you are using, you might get like better or worse results. And in fact, you might want to log on the fastest disk possible. Like, perhaps SSD will be better. Also, when you think about like writing, when you write your file, you open the stream to the file, you write down, then you close the stream. In general logs, you always write to the same file. So you always open the stream, write, close the stream. Open the stream, write, close the stream. It's super redundant. In general, it's just for one line. So the problem with this approach is, yeah, you open the stream, write down, close the stream. Meanwhile, your application is not doing anything. It's blocking. The log statement is blocking. What if we could write the log statement asynchronously? Would be a much better improvement. So this is possible in most frameworks, again, Java, but you can probably have it in your company's language. This is how you can do it with logback. You just create something called, I lost it again, like an async appender, and it wraps the file that you want to write into. And basically, what you are doing is you are opening the stream once, and then you buffer it into your memory. And when the queue is full, when the buffer is full, then you write everything down at once, and then you close the stream. So instead of opening, writing, closing, then you open, write, close, which is much faster. Of course, it's not magic. There is always a trade-off involved. So first, you must think about your queue size. So the longer the queue, the bigger the queue, the more memory it will take. So if you have a lot of like loggers, then probably your memory will get like full. faster. And then, what is it better? Like to keep all the logs and to, at some point you need to block, or to just discard to be faster? Let's think also about that. Again, there is a trade-off. And finally, you should say, I never block, and then I drop the message. Thinking about like logging, probably the log message is not the most important. I mean, it's important, but you probably have metadata that is associated with every log message. Like the first one is probably the timestamp. So just log lines of what happens are not that interesting, but the fact that there is a timestamp and then there can be order or whatever. The name of the thread, probably right now you are using multi-threading applications, unless you are doing Node.js, but I mean, it's not trolling. I'm not trolling, it's true. Huh? If you are using Node.js, it's single-threaded, but most of companies, they are not using Node.js, or perhaps they are using Java, C# or whatever, but so there is a thread name involved. Also, just the log message, not that interesting. Where does it come from? So probably you have like the class name or at least the function name. Sometimes you might even have the line number in the file. That's great for debug purpose. Well, the problem with that approach is that some metadata is required, some metadata is just like for comfort, and some metadata is easy to get, some metadata is expensive to get. So if you're doing development, for example, if you're inside your, I don't know, your development environment, so you are deploying your application, you are working in development, you want to have like the comfort of being able to debug, but getting the line number of the log in the file is really, really expensive. So in that case, it's fine for development, staging, whatever, but then in production, you probably want to remove that. The alternative is you ask your developer to write the line number. Well, that would be a bit far-fetched, but the function name. Function name, you ask your developer to prefix every log by the function name. So you don't compute it, but you write it down. Then it becomes part of the log. It's less expensive, it's faster. But again, you get back to the problem that they might get it wrong because it's not automated. Logs aggregation. Yeah, in general, you don't have one single server. You probably have like many different servers, and everybody runs their servers into the cloud. So you need a way to aggregate all your logs of all your servers at some point, because especially if you are doing microservices, you might want to check that, yeah, here, what happens on this server and what happens on this server, they are correlated. So you put all your logs into the same place. There are a lot of products available, like Elasticsearch, Splunk, Graylog, whatever. Probably I forgot a few of them, you know better than me. And in that case, when you try to think about like clusterization and stuff, then you've got additional metadata. Because now you don't have one single app with one single file. You've got multiple apps with multiple files, with multiple nodes, with multiple environments, with multiple regions if you are using the cloud. And so you probably, well, when I say probably, you want to have those also in your logs, so you can like search and exploit them correctly. Think about it. If you just want to have logs that are very, very fast, you have to just dump them somewhere. But the problem is you don't want to have just logs. You want to be able to read them, to get them out of the storage. You want to search the logs. Hey, find me all the logs that are like related to the production environment that were produced yesterday. That's probably what you want to do. I'm not talking about tags and labels, huh? So there are two ways to approach that. If you only think about having very, very fast logs, then you just dump there somewhere, unstructured. And then the problem becomes the time when you need to query them. So the schema, there is always a schema, but then the schema you need to like create it when you do the queries. Or you have the schema when you write it down, and it's slower. But then it becomes faster to query if you really thought well about your indices. I will take an example architecture because, yeah, the Elastic Stack is what I've been using in the past. So you might know about Elasticsearch, the architecture. So you have Elasticsearch, which is basically your storage engine. You have FileBit that basically scrap the files on the edge and send them to Elasticsearch. But if you want to do like some transformation in between, then FileBit send the messages to Logstash. Logstash does the transformation and then send them to Elasticsearch. You are familiar with that setup probably, even if you own architecture. So because I've been an architect, I know how to draw UML diagrams. So basically, at some point, you write the logs on the file, and then afterwards, FileBit will like read the logs, and then send the logs to Logstash, which will transform the log, and send it back to to Elasticsearch in JSON format. Familiar to you, right? So this is very hard for me, but imagine this is a single line. Of course, it's not, but and think about it. This is what you send to Logstash, and this is what Logstash does. So basically, you send a line, and through the groking pattern that you defined, then Logstash will like structure the log, saying, hey, this is a timestamp. Here, this is the log level. Hey, this is the log message. This kind of stuff. This is pretty stupid, guys. Everybody, I mean, I do it also. I did it. This is completely stupid. We are producing unstructured log to structure them through Logstash so that can be like directly into Elasticsearch in a structured way. What if we could just like produce directly this kind of stuff? That would be much simpler. That would be much simpler. Then we could have this kind of architecture. No Logstash anymore. And I don't know if you know about it, but like it's Ruby. Logstash is Ruby. So yes, it's JRuby now, but might be not the fastest beast alive. So now we can get rid of Logstash. That's great. And how hard it is to produce JSON, actually. Well, it's not hard at all. It just requires a bit of configuration. So here is my pattern. I mean, I just formatted the pattern using JSON, and that's done. Imagine you can get rid of Logstash. Crazy, right? It's just a tweak of configuration file from your developer with your help, and then you're done. Also, you must think about other stuff. If you really, really want to be fast, why write to disk and scrap it? Again, that's pretty stupid. That's pretty stupid. If you are just focused on speed, that's stupid. What you want, and what, again, FileBit allows you to, or Logstash allows you to, sorry, is to send events. So you can send events instead of writing to disk. Now the trade-off becomes, hey, what if I really, really need the logs? And something bad happens, then you've lost. So depending on how much worth the logs are to you, you might not be interested in that. Something else to consider. The log level is very important because the higher it is, the less information you have, so the less logs you produce, so the faster your system is. But then what happens if you like set the log level to very high, like error, but then at some point something happens and you need to dig deeper. What happens if you didn't think about it? Then you like stop your application, you start it again with a lower log level, which might not be really great for your customers. So you might also think that perhaps you should, or you could, have hot reloads. So there is like a little daemon that takes a bit of like CPU time, but which constantly like rereads your log configuration and then adjust it dynamically. And then you can have like a very high level when you don't need it, and then like with just a change in the configuration, change it down. So that could be good. All that I've showed you so far, you might say, hey, but this is not business related. We don't have money to change that. That's where I actually can object. Just like metrics, logs are not only technical. So I know how it works in company. If you have a very good idea, but the business doesn't benefit for it, that means no budget, right? Yeah. So unless you work for like technically minded companies that understand the values behind it, then you have no budget, you cannot do anything. The logs, they are not only technical. The logs might be, for example, once I worked for a cloud company, and the logs were the way we build our users. So here we didn't send events because we wanted to keep like the proof, and then we did like log scraping. Also, what you must consider is, I mean, the diagram that I showed you is just one simple architecture. You could have multiple ones. You have a lot of options. Again, in my previous company, we didn't use FileBit because the people were not used to FileBit. They used syslog NJ. And to ensure durability, then we send our stuff to Kafka. And then in Kafka, we could process every business event and build the people accordingly. So here, it's also something that could work for you. It's just an example. This is just an option. Everything is possible. I say in a lot of my talks, I say a lot, it depends, and people think that I'm making fun of them, but actually it really depends. So summary, instead of like passing the result of the long computation, like execute direct, like pass the computation itself, consider the file system you want to write to. If you value speed more than resiliency, then probably you should go asynchronous. Also check the metadata. Some developers, they want to write down everything, and some of the metadata that is associated with those things can be like very, very time consuming. Of course, schema on write is slower, but as the alternative is you cannot search in a real good way, so you should do it. And yeah, send JSON and just get rid of every transformation. I believe that it's the responsibility of everyone to have fast logs. That I've shown you is that basically it starts with the developer, then you've got the guy who like thinks about the hardware, and then your architecture also is important, and how you handle the streams. So everybody should be aware of that problem. It must be a joint effort. So if you really, really want to have the fastest logs possible, then you should involve everybody. And yeah, that's very important. Speed, you can get very fast, but then it won't be super reliable, or you will get very fast, but then it will be very slow to search. So it's always about the trade-off that you want, and yeah, that needs to be discussed inside your company. So thanks for listening to me. You can read about my blog, you can follow me on Twitter, and now there is some, like 5 minutes for questions. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you. Thank you for saving me, because like the previous speaker, if there is no question, it
Thanks to
can be either a good sign or a bad sign.
Oh. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Nice talk. My
Thanks.
question would be, you talked about the different requirements for logging that developers, operators might have. I was wondering, from your point of view, who should make those final determinations, which trade-offs are having to be taken for a logging system? Is it rather the developer who knows how the code works in and out, or is it rather the operator who has to fix things, or is it a user? For some reason.
So the question, well, it's recorded. So basically, I think that, I mean, you probably are in different organizations, every one of you. Developers are only interested in developer stuff, mainly. Ops people, they don't care. I always said that the best production environment is an environment where there are no apps, because it's super stable. So the problem with saying, hey, it's better to let the developers take the decision, or it's better to let ops take the decision, is you always have this wall of shame, of miscommunication between dev and ops. So unless you are in an environment which has transparent communication, like DevOps, it will be very hard, and it will be skewed in one way or another. So, depends on your organization. And to be honest, removing this wall is the hardest you can achieve in any organization, because that's how our traditional culture has been built. Developers on one side, production on the other side. And because, of course, if you create a local optimum and another local optimum, then you bought the optimum global, which is completely crap. But again, that's how our organizations are built upon.
Thank you.
It doesn't mean that actually you cannot take it on your side. Like, for example, if you are a developer, you can already try to do asynchronous logging, for example, or no, that even might be already a trade-off, because you might lose some stuff, but passing computation instead of the result of computation is completely side effect free. And that is a very, very easy and fast improvement.
Some more questions?
Somebody wants just to, not to have a question, but just because he wants that you throw the cube at him. Yeah. Yeah, I knew it. I felt it.
I don't have a question, that's right. But thanks for the nice talk. And I think, in addition, the developer, if you go with JSON directly, has an advantage, because he can have a look at a graphical GUI, where you can see changes in his logs or something else. So it might be good for the developers too, I guess, when they have instant feedback from their application.
Okay, so your assumption is developers have access to these GUI tools.
Yes.
And now you understand where I'm heading to. Because I remember it was 8 years ago, I had to ask for the production logs. And of course, you might understand that it was in a public administration, between the time where I needed them and the time where I asked them and the time I got them. So, yes, it would be great if all developers had access to those dashboards and metrics. And again, it's a lot about collaborating, removing stupid permissions where it's not necessary. But I agree, yes.
And you can remove the backlog from if the log message is changed, then someone need to rework the whole grok pattern that the message is matched again. And if you send JSON directly, you have the instant result. So
yes.
You reduce overheat, work. It's pretty gnarly. So Thanks.
You're welcome. Other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Have a good day.